Hello everyone, and welcome to WriterSpeak, dedicated to the written word and those who produce it. I'm your host, Jeane Slone, the author of 3 historical fictions, She Flew Bombers, She Built Ships, and the newly published She Was an American Spy During World War II. Today in our studio, I would like to welcome Beaury Foshee and her amazing, intimate, I would call it an intimate memoir titled Children of the Howling Desert. And it is really a wonderful title, having read the book.
Thank you.
And the cover is very lovely.
Thank you. Thank you. A friend of mine, Judy Staples of Staples Creative, actually did a pastel painting just for the book cover.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yes.
That's good to know. And did she give you the painting then?
Yes, she did. Yes, she
Oh.
did. Yeah, she's a wonderful friend, and she did a beautiful job. I thought, bringing in the feeling that I was looking for. Yeah.
How wonderful that you have the painting that you can look at.
Yes. Yes, very much so. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the first question is, why the title? It's a title that makes us think, wow, wonder what this is about.
Well, Children of the Howling Desert is about the mythology of families who are embroiled in domestic violence and how they cope with domestic violence. It's a mythology that they talk about that is passed on from generation to generation. And basically, it's the lies that they tell to make it all right. And so growing up in that type of environment, Children of the Howling Desert, the desert is a dry, sere place. Sometimes it's very devoid of emotional sustenance. And that's the reason I called it Children of the Howling Desert, because that's what it's like for kids to grow up in an environment like that.
I know that when there was violence in your home, sometimes you would escape out into the desert.
Yes, yes. My brother and I, one of our favorite places in the world was escaping through the desert, climbing a huge boulder in a cairn of rocks, and sitting and howling at the moon, howling in the desert. And it's one of those old subdivisions in which behind it was the desert, and it hadn't been developed yet, and we could go out there and sit for hours and yell and scream and howl, and the sound carried. And people in the subdivision, the kids that we knew, would sometimes say, "Did you hear about those wolves in the desert? My dad says they're escaped from a carnival." And my brother and I would just laugh.
It probably gave you a sense of empowerment.
It did. It really did. It really did, because people believe what they want to believe, and what they didn't know is that it was my brother and I. And sometimes it made us laugh so hard.
It was so fortunate that you had that wonderful connection and camaraderie with your brother.
Yes, yes, yes. We were very, very close, and we were very close in age as well. So that's probably the reason why. But we were also brought together in a way we clung to each other because we were what we had.
And what state, what is your memoir set in?
Well, the beginning of it is set in Texas. We did live in El Paso for a period of time. My father was stationed at Fort Bliss Military Base, and we lived in El Paso, Texas, in the desert, very hot and dry, and seemingly, very, devoid of plant life, but that's not true. The desert is actually can be a beautiful place as well.
I think this would be a good time for the audience to hear a part of your book.
Okay.
to bring us into what the story's about.
Okay. I'm going to read a little bit from chapter 2.
Wonderful.
Rules, rules, and more rules. No privacy allowed. The door to the room must be kept open at all times. You'd better look busy every waking moment. No lying on the bed during the day. Even when he wasn't around, the rules applied because there was no telling when he'd appear, and there was no crime worse than getting caught napping. According to my father, Reuben, I faked migraines to garner his sympathies, but that wasn't true because the only emotions pouring from him toward me were anger and hatred, neither of which could be misconstrued as empathy or sympathy. Whether he believed it or not, the headaches were real, sometimes so terrible the nausea and dizziness and blurred vision left me wondering if it was a brain tumor. At the time, I didn't know headaches were migraines. Just thought maybe the tumor would eventually and mercifully put me out of my misery. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, cautiously facing the door, I grabbed the thickest from a neatly piled stack of books on the nightstand and listened for footsteps in the hall. Nothing. Furtively tweezing the dog-eared notebook from its hiding place between the mattress and box springs, I lay it across the open book and lovingly rifled through the fluffy, soft as cotton pages until finding the one titled Freedom Plan. The 16-year-old girl who'd written the list almost 3 years prior is not the same one reading it now. Only months from turning 19, she is resolute and world-weary. Pretending to study for an exam already taken a week ago, with pencil in hand, I tick off each item for the 1,000th time. 1, get a job. Check. 2, save money. Check. 3, try out for Up With Folks. Erased, smudged. Apply for flight attendant jobs. Major airlines listed. Erased, smudged as well. Apply to the University of Kansas. Check. 4, when accepted, go to Lawrence. Get a job. Check. 5, rent an apartment. Check. 6, move. With everything but the move out of the way, the next thing is to break the news to Mama and Reuben. Pacing past the doorway, trying to act as though she doesn't want to interrupt, Mama leans in, pauses, and walks away. She's back 15 minutes later, agitated in that way that says she's out of cigarettes or coffee or both and needs me to go to the store. And as usual, she'll expect me to pay for them. She almost never has any money. I put her off for the moment to concentrate on making another list, things I need for my new apartment. Carefully weighing the importance of each item and whether it's needed for now or later takes another 30 minutes. The next time she stands in the doorway, I acknowledge her presence. Mama, is something wrong? Do you have any money, she blurts. Yes. Can you go to the store and get a carton of cigarettes for me? And I'm also out of coffee, too. Viceroy 100s and Folgers drip grind. I know the combination by heart. 15 minutes later, I place the cigarettes on the kitchen table and proceed to pour water into the coffee maker, open the can I've just bought, and scoop dark grains into the basket to start a fresh pot. Waiting for the coffee to brew while staring out of the window into the evening darkness, my eyes shift perspective to her reflection in the window. She sits frowning, staring down at her hands, a plume of smoke wafting from her lips in a long, slow exhalation. Flavoring hers with lots of sugar and cream the way she likes, I slide a mug onto the placemat in front of her. Cupping my hands around mine as though they need warming, it's unseasonably warm, about 85 degrees. I take the chair directly across. Mama, I need to tell you something. Gathering my thoughts and courage, I wait for her eyes to meet mine before continuing. I have a job and an apartment. I'm moving to Lawrence in 2 days. Cheerless eyes bore through my soul as the dawning of what I've said slowly comes to light on her face. articulated in changing expressions the right and left brain battle. You're selfish just like your father, she spits. Mama, if Papa is so selfish, then why are you still with him? And if I'm just like him, you should be happy to see me go. With shaky hands, she lights another cigarette from the butt of the last, takes a long, deep drag. This time I light one too. When did you do all of this? I took a day off work last week. Before leaving the house that morning, I'd left her cigarettes on the table so she wouldn't need to call me at work. Why didn't you tell me you were thinking about leaving? What about your sisters and brother? What will they do? I can't believe you're leaving me alone with him.
Yeah, that must have took a lot of guts for you to be able to leave, and to think that it took 19 years.
Yes.
And I guess you figured out it took intricate planning.
Yes.
In order to do so.
And that's one of the things that experts tell women in domestic violence situations, that you have to plan.
Oh.
You have to plan your exit.
Mm-hmm.
And
but you figured that out on your own.
I did figure that out on my own, and that was one of the reasons I would try to get my mother to leave him. And that's why I was so disappointed, because she couldn't find her way to planning her exit the way that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And I just never could understand that, even though she left him several times, but she always bounced back.
And why do you think that is, that she continued to stay with a man who was violently against her physically?
I think that she felt powerless. And there's a pattern. A lot of times when you see families like this, they don't grow up in a vacuum. Just all of a sudden, this happens. It's usually generational.
Mm-hmm.
She was the victim of a violent mother. My father, I'm sure, was a victim of a violent father or mother, and they bring that with them into every relationship they have. And so it's tough for people to break the cycle. It is a cycle.
And there seems like there's rules around it,
Mm-hmm.
that a facade is put on in public,
Mm-hmm.
that this goes on behind closed doors,
Yes.
and that it's acceptable, and that when you were physically harmed by your father, he felt he was doing his duty. That's how he was trying to bring you up correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, very much so. And as I said before, you see situations like this. A recent event happened, I believe it was in Fairfield or maybe Nevada, of a husband and wife who had been in dire straits. But the neighbors didn't know this, because families like this are consummate liars. They keep the secrets inside the household, and they tell no one. And the only way that they're going to be helped is to go outside of the family, but they don't realize this. And so a lot of times when I see in the news events of murder-suicide where the husband or the wife, in some cases, the husband will kill the wife and then kill himself. And the neighbors are interviewed and they said, well, they were such a nice family.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was going on. And they didn't know what was going on because the family wasn't going to let them in on it.
What I found really sad is when you finally got up the nerve to try to seek help or get help, and you run away, mm-hmm. and you'd call.
Mm-hmm.
The police would come to the door, and I guess they knew your father.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
And so it was a small town type atmosphere.
Yes.
And so they didn't believe anything you said, or they covered for him.
Yes, they did, because many of the police, you'll have to remember that it's a military base, and many on the police force, once they retire from the military, they go directly to the police force. And yes, they did know him. And he was well known and well respected, highly respected, as a matter of fact.
And because you were the oldest, it seemed to me that you were then the head of the family to try to make the family functional.
Yes, yes, that was my job, to make the family functional.
And you had 4 siblings, is that correct?
I had, all told, by the time that they were finished having children, I had 6 siblings.
Mm-hmm.
And in the very beginning, the last sibling didn't come along until very late. But for the most part, the place where this book took place, there were 6 of us, and I was the oldest, and I was always trying to protect my sisters, protect my brother,
And your mother.
and my mother. I fed them. Sometimes I would take money out of her purse and ride my bike to the store to buy milk for the kids, to make dinner, buy some hamburger. Sometimes when my mother was so horribly beaten, it was my job to take over and take care of the rest of the kids and actually try to keep them calm, to keep them from seeing their mother like that. And I didn't realize that what I was doing was abnormal, because that's all I knew.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that I was doing the right thing by trying to protect my sisters and keep them from seeing her beaten up like that, and taking over the family and taking over, making sure everyone was taken care of, that they got to school, that they had clean clothes, that they were fed.
But there were times when your mother also beat you.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. And it was a trickle-down effect. She, even though I tried to protect her, when he was particularly mean to her, then she would take it out on me or my brother. And my sister, Jewel. She took it out on my sister, Jewel, as well. I don't, to this day, I still don't understand why she disliked Jewel so much. But to her dying day, she hated my sister, Jewel, who was number 3 in line. It was myself, my brother, and then there was Jewel. We were the 3 oldest.
Do you feel that your brother Aaron is the one who suffered the most?
I do. I think that Aaron didn't know where he fit in a world where he loved his sisters dearly. And he had 5 of us, and his mother. And I know that he wanted to be different, but he had no way of knowing how to be different. So on one hand, he felt that he shouldn't be violent, but he wasn't taught not to be violent. That meant, where does he fit as a man when he grows up? Whether he's going to be a violent man or, I think that he was very torn, and that he suffered the most out of all of us, yes.
That must have been really hard for you when he died.
Oh, it was devastating. It was devastating.
What made you finally want to write this book?
Well, after Aaron's death, I decided to stop being a coward and to stop colluding with that mythology that a family perpetrates generation after generation. I decided to completely make the break from it and tell the story so that if I can help one person, if one family can see themselves in the pages of the book, and if one mother or one father or one child can get help, because things are different nowadays. There are resources. There are more resources now than there were when I grew up.
And I think now, I may be wrong,
Mm-hmm.
if you were to call the police, you would have maybe gotten some help.
I do. I truly believe that nowadays.
You do think it is different?
I was a generation too late.
Yeah.
Or too early.
I was
a generation
so wondering
before.
about that.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
And even as a child, I adamantly believed that it was completely wrong. But I just couldn't get anyone to help me.
So to write this book, did you start to study your parents' families?
Yes, I did.
I got that feeling.
I began to look at the oral history that was given to me when I was a child. The oral history I'd heard from my grandmother, some of the oral history and some of the oral history I wasn't supposed to remember. The oral history the little bit that my father told me, the pieces of oral history from my mother's childhood, and surrounding uncles and aunts and various cousins, and I figured out that our family is a family of generations of domestic violence and mental illness. Not only was there domestic violence, but there are many members of the family who are also mentally ill or who also suffer from mental illness, untreated mental illness, and mental illness that is unacknowledged. And that's part of what happened to my brother.
And how painful was it for you to write this book? Were you able to just keep writing, or did you write it over a period of time because it was painful to write?
It was very, very painful to write, and yes, it took a very long time to write. It began when right after my brother's death, I sought grief therapy because I knew I wasn't going to be able to handle this without therapy.
Now, was that the first time you were in therapy?
No.
We might want to go back, I guess.
Yes, I developed a true belief in therapy when I went away to college, mm-hmm. and sort of fell apart there, and went to the mental health services. I was actually led by the hand by a friend to mental health services, and was given brief therapy. I had whittled myself down to 80 pounds. I suffered from anorexia and cutting. And I believe at the time that that therapy saved my life, because I think that I really wanted to die. I was doing it because, and sort of unconsciously, subconsciously, I didn't know how else to deal with the pain.
I think to compound the problem, your mother didn't want you to leave.
Yes.
Your mother kept asking you to come back.
Yes, very much so.
And you tried to stay strong to stay away.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But you know you were being pulled and pulled and pulled.
Yes.
So it sounds to me like you caused pain on yourself because you weren't going back.
Very much so. I was so confused when I left home. It was a betrayal of sorts to the family. And I wanted to be a part of my family. I wanted my family to love me. But I didn't know how to fit in the way that they wanted me to. And I knew that I wasn't going to do it that way. So I was very confused about, what life was supposed to be like. Had always been told by my father that I couldn't survive on the outside because I was worthless and, didn't have the skills to do that. When in reality, as the oldest child and as the caretaker of the family, I had all the skills.
Yeah, very much so.
Yes.
I guess you were looking for permission to be by yourself and improve yourself and become you.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, yes. And eventually that did happen. But going back to writing the book, it did take a long time for me to write the book because it was very painful. I had to think about things that I hadn't thought about in years. things that I'd stuffed and put away in order to keep moving ahead and to become me. And when he died, it was like a waterfall of PTSD. It all came flooding back because I knew that his death was connected to how we had grown up, and he'd done the same things to himself, or continued to do those things throughout his life that I had done after I left home. And he continued to do those things throughout his life. And he also suffered from a cocktail of mental illnesses that no one was willing to acknowledge, that many remained undiagnosed, and he himself was very resistant to therapy. So when he became an adult, there was nothing we could do. Mm-hmm. Try as I may, I couldn't save him.
What about your other siblings? How are they all doing? Has anybody else been able to overcome this family situation, this dysfunctional family that you were able to overcome?
My sister Jewel overcame, and I think the reason that happens is that you have to leave. You have to see that there's something else in the world besides that dysfunctional family, and you have to be very strong to leave, because the family keeps pulling you back. My mom would call me throughout my adulthood, and I have this lovely life, and she would call and say, "When are you coming to visit?
Yeah.
You know, you need to come home and visit." And I never thought of that as being home. But what I thought of being home is the home that I created with my husband and my son and my little dog.
That's what I would like to talk about, that wasn't in your book, is how you were able to meet somebody and have a normal family life. Because in a way, we end up copying our parents, which is what you realized that your parents did. They were just copying what they knew. Mm-hmm. And you, as a wife, only knew how to copy your mother,
right,
or your father.
Exactly.
And then as a mother, copying your mother.
Exactly.
And how were you able to meet your husband and become, normal? I don't like to use that word, but...
I wouldn't say that I'm normal, but I am happy with my life. I'm contented with my life, and I'm content with the accomplishing that goal. This is something I've always wanted. It means so much to me to be able to have a family that I love and to hang out with, and we're all mellow and we love each other. And part of it was that therapy. I wanted to be different. I knew that I always wanted to be different, and so over the years, I went to therapy off and on, depending on if I thought I needed it. And I was never ashamed of that. I had to learn different skills, different tools, a skill set, in order to be able to navigate the world. Meeting my husband, it was almost kismet that we should meet, and that he is the gentle, kind person that he is, because I needed that.
And he had to interact with your parents.
He did. He did have to, and he was so wonderful. He knew exactly what was going on because he's a psychologist.
Oh.
He knew exactly. He discerned that situation from the first time that he met my father, and my father insulted him and made fun of him. He knew exactly what was going on. And he was just the really decent man who allowed me to go through it and understand how to get beyond it, how to get beyond, because he knew that I wanted to be different. And I told him about my family. I told him everything because I figured he needed to know that. And my goal in life has been to not reproduce that situation.
So you didn't perpetuate the secret?
No.
Because it is very secretive.
It is very secret. And I told him, and some things when my son was ready, he often asked me, Mom, now I have a grandfather, my dad's dad. Mm-hmm. Do you have a dad? Because I didn't want my son to be exposed to that.
Yeah.
And living here in California, it was rather easy to do that, mm-hmm. because they were in Texas and I was here. And when I eventually had to tell him, well, honey, yes, I do have a father, but I would prefer that he's not a part of our lives because I don't think that he would be good for us. And, my son seemed to be fine with that.
Now, so how did your other sisters fare besides Jewel?
The rest of them pretty much remained in the area. Some of them moved away, but they always came back and brought their children with them and stayed inside the dysfunction of the family. Mm-hmm. When my mother died, basically she sat in a chair after retiring from school, and she sat in a chair smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee, and watching Investigation Discovery. And that was the extent of her life.
I found it fascinating that she actually went back to school and got a degree and did some teaching.
She did. And that was always the fascinating part for me. Why go back to school? Because, when she did that, when she went back to school, I thought, oh my goodness, this is the most wonderful thing. I'm helping out. I'm going to do everything I can to support you in this, to make sure that you can finish school, because it said to me, even at that age, I was 14 when that happened. Mm-hmm. Even at that age, it said to me that she was thinking about her future.
Well, maybe that little bit of modeling helped, except that she continued to be with an abusive man anyway,
yes.
Even though she was functioning well in society for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
She would go back home, and it would be the same cycle.
Indeed, and my parents are products of their environments, and that's what I've had to realize. And writing this book also gelled that piece of information for me, that reality, that truth, that they are products of their environments. Mm-hmm. And perhaps it was too strong for them, or perhaps they never got the skills to be able to break the cycle.
Well, you can tell in your book that you are very well educated. Your vocabulary is wonderful. It just made me happy to see that you became such an intelligent woman and overcame it. Even though not once did you say, I got a degree in this, or I'm this. I have no idea, I work and do that. Mm-hmm. You mm-hmm. never said that, mm-hmm. but I could tell that you did.
It was very important it was very important for me to become well educated, and to pass that along to my son. And part of it is this new, for me and my family, the family that I've created, it's a new order. And I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to forge ahead and make sure that happened.
When I read your book, I loved at the ending. You think you're at the end of it, and it says, "Not the end yet," in bold letters.
Yes.
And there it was. It said, if you experience domestic violence, call this phone number. And then it also listed NAMI, which stands for?
The National Association for Mental Illness.
Yeah. And that was just perfect. Also, you have quite a big index in the back, which I noticed. So I knew that you were doing quite a lot of research just to write the book.
I did.
It's very, very helpful.
Yes, I did.
It would be good for our viewers to see that these organizations and the phone number will be listed on the credits.
Okay, that's wonderful, please.
And where would someone buy your very enlightening book?
The book is being sold through thebookpatch.com. And in the following weeks, the book will also be offered through Amazon and will be offered in paperback format as well as digital format. So look for that. And also, if you would like to find out information, I'm also blogging at childrenofthehowlingdesert.com.
And we will put that in the credits.
Okay.
For people, in order for people to write that down and look it up.
Great. Thank you.
Well, it was my great pleasure to have read your book. Even though it was difficult for me, I learned a great deal.
I'm glad that you
did.
And
that makes it a good book.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeane.
And I wish you best of luck. I can tell you just seem like a very warm and happy person in your future endeavors.
Thank you so much, Jeane. Thank you. And it was wonderful being here. Thank you for interviewing me and bringing the message to people.
And thank you.
You're welcome.
WriterSpeak is produced in the Seed Media Lab in Santa Rosa. We would also like to thank our sponsors, the Sonoma County Gazette and the Redwood Writers, a branch of the California Writers Club. Please join us next time for another exciting episode of WriterSpeak.